Yeah. Am I with you?
I think, yeah, I'm with you, Sidi.
Okay. Let's carry on.
Okay, so I think this was a sign from God. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sorry that we've had some technical difficulties tonight, um, and so I'm taking this as a sign that that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, that God Most High, uh, wants us to move from Surah At-Tawbah to Surah Yunus, the Surah of Jonah. And so,
Yes.
with your permission, I think we should forge ahead with the Surah of Jonas.
Let's go.
Okay. And as we said in the previously, when I guess everyone was glitching and we didn't have a chance to be heard mercifully, um, we are moving back in time quite considerably here. We're moving from a late Medinan period, so toward the end of that 23-year period of revelation, we're moving back into the Meccan period, and we're going to notice really significant shifts of focus and style, because this was a very different context and a very different time. But we'll also see a continuation of many themes that we've already been discussing in the previous portions during this blessed month. So, all right, Dr. Mahan. Alif Lam
Yes.
Ra.
Alif, the lam has a mud. So Alif Lam Ra. There's a yes.
Yes, and as I said before when we were glitching, one of the things that I really enjoy about these evenings is watching how much delight you take sometimes in the not just what the Quran is saying, but how it is saying it. And so I enjoy those moments when we're doing this together. Alhamdulillah.
Yes, yes. Wait till we get to Surah Al-Asr. There's a sound, rhyme, and meaning in that is just
Hmm.
blows me away. But it's all over. But yes, go ahead. Take us through this, Doctor.
Well, we're back. We're back in in a Meccan context where, so we're going to be seeing a lot of references to people who are uh, for whatever reason they're not hearing the signs, they're not receiving the message, but and we're going to see some return to the stories of different prophets and their communities. But one thing I really want to begin tonight, and I would be remiss if we didn't spend a little time on it tonight, is this concept of the book of nature. So before there was a Bible, before there was a Torah, before there was a gospel, before there was a Quran, there was nature. And the Quran is constantly asking its, and this happens a lot in the Meccan period, constantly asking its original audience to look at the natural world and to see the signs there that ultimately point to the reality of a benevolent creator. And so here I'm just looking at ayah number 6, just as an example. So surely in the ikhtilaf of the day and the night, the alternation of the night and the day, and in everything that God has created in the heavens and on the earth, these are signs, ayat. These are signs for those who are conscious of God. And in other verses, we'll see signs for those who use their intellects and who are thinking. But the idea here is that the ayah, interestingly, every verse of the Quran is also called a sign or an ayah, which means it's a pointer, it's a signifier, and everything in nature is pointing to the reality of the creator. And so the Quran is going to say, oh, you don't believe it? Look at nature, look at how God brings life out of death, and how the natural world works. And so there's this frequent recourse to nature as sort of the original book, the original revelation to humankind. And I was really happy when I saw that this would be a topic for discussion tonight, because it's a very prominent theme in the Quran. And I think even Fazlur Rahman, in his wonderful book Major Themes of the Quran, talks a lot about this. but this but it's something that I'm glad we had a chance to pause and consider.
Yeah, and this whole these first few verses from the Alif Lam Ra, these are the signs.
Yeah.
Tilka ayat al-kitab al-hakim, of the wise script or book, of the wise book. And do people think it's strange? أَكَانَ لِلنَّاسِ عَجَبًا أَنْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى رَجُلٍ مِّنْهُمْ, that we would send our revelations to a man from amongst them, like
Yeah.
one of them who's just a man is suddenly getting this thing from another realm. And this revelations that's saying warn the people but also give them glad tidings. So there's one group that's completely transgressing, and they need to be warned. There's another group that's in the struggle, and they're like, why me, and why this, but like they're and to them it's like, stay firm, there's good tidings for you, keep going, and to reassure them. And then I'm just jumping, your Lord is the one who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days.
Yeah.
And then he ascended the throne. I mean, this is imagery, right? And we were asked before, like, what is allegorical language? I mean, this is it, right? And it's giving you this imagery of a Lord who creates the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and then he ascends a throne. And there's this sequencing, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ, like there's almost like God is in the sequence, but we know he's outside time, and then ascending a throne implies spatial.
Yeah.
And so these things are difficult for us to grasp, and definitely not to be taken literally. يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ, regulating and governing all affairs. And this is, at least, this is how we're supposed to view the world. It's not unregulated. That there is a governor, as crazy and insane and chaotic as it seems, and unjust. There's a just and wise governor. And so it's an invitation for us, like, what is the purpose? To think deeply about the wisdom behind all things that happen. Which is very difficult, because we're in it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is, and it's it is perplexing. I mean, there are so many great theological questions that just cannot be answered in any kind of satisfactory way. And so this is where that word that comes up again and again in the Quran of tawakkul, the idea of like total trust and reliance, that even though there are many situations where we have no idea where the mercy is and where the benevolence is, but there's a trust that somehow, some way, God is in the mix, and that God's providence is operative, and that God's lordship is operative. And we're going to see that when we get to the surah of Joseph, Surah Yusuf, when Yusuf is, and we mentioned this on a previous night, when Yusuf is going through all this terrible stuff, sold into slavery and falsely accused, and all these terrible things, but that God was in total control of his situation, right? God, and so that's a mystery that nobody can really explain, especially, as you say, while we're in it. It's a perplexing ordeal, but it is, once God is on the throne, then here comes the promise that, so to him will be your return, of all of you, whether you believe in him or not. And the promise of Allah, the promise of God is certain and true. And so there's a sense then that God is established. And the Quran is really not very strong on the anthropomorphic qualities of God, right? So that we don't hear a lot about God's hand or God's face, even though once in a while we'll see it metaphorically referred to. And here we have this idea of a throne, of God, being on a throne. And you're right, it's a physical kind of bodily image, but the Quran will also um, make it very clear that there's nothing like unto God, and that all of these kind of bodily references to God uh, have to be
Mm,
metaphorical. You
mm.
know.
No, that's beautiful. And since you mentioned that, the return, maybe we can look at verse 24, which is a metaphor for the life of this world.
Mm,
Mathalul hayati dunya. But as we get into this, there's two things here that really stand out to me in the surah. The word Quran comes over and over again. Like the Quran mentions itself, it's self-referential.
mm,
And like this Quran, bring, Quran. And then uh, there's a very, very strong kind of thematic orientation towards God's unity. And in the beginning, it's this throne, the governance, the sovereignty, and we'll see an echo of monotheism, in that powerful way towards the end of the surah as well. Um, and if we get a chance after this one, if we do anything, there's these few verses that talk about the awliya Allah,
mm. The
and their
friends of God.
qualities, the
Yeah.
friends of God. But here's our return is to Him. And what is the life of this world like? This is verse 24. The life of this world is like this, that rain that we send down from the sky is absorbed by the plants of the earth. This is the life of this world, like rain from the sky,
Mm,
and it's absorbed by the plants of the earth, from which humans and animals eat. But when the earth has taken on its finest appearance, spring is coming. Today was a beautiful day
mm,
in and we'll see it and adorns itself, and its people think they have power over it.
mm,
Like this is we can cultivate it. Then the fate we commanded comes to it by night or by day, and we reduce it to stubble. I mean, just think about the contrast between spring, summer, and fall, winter.
mm,
And every season now, I'm in this mode where it seems like the fall, the winter will never come, and then it comes with a vengeance, and you feel like, how will anything grow here? And suddenly
mm,
it transforms, and so this becomes like stubble, as if it had not flourished just the day before.
mm,
This is the life of this world.
mm. And this comes after some rather discouraging lessons that are, I think, very true to human experience. And but where God is, the Quran is giving us a clear account of how people, when they're in hardship, they'll call out to God and in distress, and then when God gives them what they ask for, then they forget about God. And so there's this sense that when life is flowering, and that's here too, when life is flowering and everything is great, those are the most dangerous spiritual moments, because those are the moments when we think we're in control, and
Right,
we don't need God.
right,
And but the Quran seems to lament the fact that people are just like this.
right,
When they're in trouble, they'll call out to God, and then when God answers their prayer and gives them some ease and some um, a moment of flowering and ease, then people forget about God and think that they can live without
right.
the divine.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the clock. Let's make our way to
Okay.
the friends of God. But on the way, you see, it says, this is 36. Most of them follow nothing but assumptions, or conjecture. And then ma kana hadha al-Quran, that this Quran cannot have been devised by anyone other than God. So it's speaking to itself. Um, and then I think in verse 61 again, uh, in whatever matter you, prophet, may be engaged, and whatever part of the Quran you're reciting, it's
Mm,
actually, again, referring to itself. And then verse 62, Allah inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun.
Yeah.
So, in all of the vagaries and ups and downs of this world, behold, Allah. It's, very, the translations they have a hard time doing in English. Verily,
Yes.
on the friends of God there is no fear,
Yeah.
nor shall they grieve.
Mm.
Those who believe and are conscious of God, or they guard, protect themselves,
Mm.
train themselves. For them are glad tidings, right? And this is, you saw it was a warner. The Quran
Yeah.
warns, but also gives good tidings. For them are glad tidings, or is the good news in the life, in this life and in the hereafter.
Yeah.
There is no changing the promises of God or the words of God. And this is the supreme triumph. لا يحزنك قولهم. So don't let their speech grieve thee, because the
No,
prophet,
that's a different there,
yeah,
right? Not
right.
the not the speech of the friends of God,
No, no,
but the enemies. Yeah, right.
yeah,
There's a
yeah.
switch.
It
Yeah.
switches the reference, because the prophet, can you imagine? I mean, you're getting revelation from God, you're witnessing this, and the people are rejecting you,
Yeah.
and you know what's going to happen. I mean, this would grieve you. And so the prophet is grieved, and God is saying, don't let their speech grieve you. All the power and honor belongs to God. Innal izzata lillahi jami'a. And he hears and knows all things. There are things you don't know and you don't hear, but God hears and knows all things. So it's a very nice section here. And I know you've done a lot on Sufism and spiritual psychology, so maybe you can say a little more about
No,
this,
no, no.
the friends of God.
This is the awliya. It's yeah, no, the awliya. It's interesting. In Islam, I guess the Muslim equivalent or the Islamic equivalent of saint would be a wali, right? And interestingly, this term doesn't really mean sanctified. It literally means the friend or the patron or the and in this case, God is the patron and the wali is the patronized. But there's this sense that God has friends, and so in addition to the messengers, there are these awliya, right? These
Hmm.
friends of God, and it's so beautiful that the Quran would refer to them here in this way, and that they're the bliss. And this is really interesting. A lot of people approach the religious life as if, okay, I can hold tight now. I'll have a bad life here, but I'm working toward a good life in the next world. But the reference here is that uh, the good news and the bliss and the joy is both present in this world and the next. And so for the people who enter into a intimate friendship with God, their joy is wherever they are, and that their very existence is connected to these glad tidings.
Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm. And God, sometimes friends can be unruly. I'm remembering Ahmed Kara Mustafa's book, God's Unruly Friends.
Yes.
when the awliya, when the awliya, they can develop antinomian tendencies, or that they have insights that common people don't, and they'll separate themselves as another kind of elite. But that's a whole nother kind of trajectory in the sociology of mystical life in Islamic history.
Mm.
And maybe in conclusion, if you want to, do you want to think about connecting this to that verse of knowledge that you were mentioning before we came on board, that when knowledge comes, people start to divide. Do you know which one that is?
Oh yes, yes. So that was back in the beginning. Um, Before we get to the inimitability of the Quran, how that, because we have to remember that the pre-Islamic Arabia was an oral culture and poetry was their highest art form. And so if God was to come to them in a miraculous form, it made sense that he came to them in a linguistic form,
Yeah,
you
spoken
know,
word. Yeah.
that just really shocked them and knocked them. So I'm going back. So we have in Surah, and this is in Ayah 12. So this is the 12th verse where we read, and this is kind of very familiar human psychology. When trouble reaches a human being, he cries to us, lying down on his side or sitting or standing. But when we have solved his trouble, he goes on his way as if he had never cried to us for a trouble that had touched him. Thus do the deeds of the transgressors seem fair in their own eyes. And then we have a reminder: the generations before you, we have destroyed. And this is kind of setting us up for, again, a repeat or another reference to the story of Noah later in this chapter. But the idea that some people only remember God when things are tough and things are difficult, and then in these moments of ease and these moments of flowering, we feel strong and empowered and independent of God. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Muslims tend to look upon you with joy and love when you're going through a hard time, and they just say to you, "Oh, God must really love you, brother," or "God must really," because this teaching is also found in the poetry of Rumi, when he says, and we referred to this earlier, I know, in another night, that the things that make you run to God, you should be grateful for those things, and worry about those friends who bring you delicious comforts that keep you from your prayer. And so this idea that hardship and distress can drive us to God, and that unless we are truly God conscious, we can drift when things get easy. And this is something that's clearly a repeated teaching in this surah. Yeah. So with our glitching, CD, our night has been shortened. So is there anything that we should say before we close for tonight?
If I'll just say the following. I'm not sure if both the programs recorded or if this overwrote the other one, because we entered the same program. They might be in two different files. So for those of you watching this, we glitched and we had to log out and log back in. And so we might be missing the first part of the discussion of tonight, or it may be in another YouTube link. But if we're missing it, then what I say is Alhamdulillah, because we were entered some very dangerous territory in Surah At-Tawbah, and God, right at the right moment, glitched us out and saved us from any kind of consequences of discussing things perhaps irresponsibly. I'm speaking of myself. So so just that's a parting word on tonight's stream, and maybe that prayer that may God protect us from ourselves and from each other.
Ameen.
And bless us in these. Now we're in the second third of Ramadan, with the 11th juz, and tomorrow the 11th fast. So may Allah bless your fasting and your time this month at night with the Quran.
Wa iyyakum, inshallah, and for you too, Sidi.
Okay.
God bless everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.